Dick, thanks very much for joining us today. You have just heard Andrew Cuomo's speech. What is your first impression?
Well, my first impression is that Andrew Cuomo is a great orator, and he proved that again today. He created a vision for New York State that we certainly want to be part of creating.
There was a lot of talk about everyone having to join in and do more with less. This is something that, of course, the governor has been talking about since back on his campaign trail days. NYSET did not endorse him for the campaign, and now the union, along with other unions, has launched 2 radio ads, actually ad campaigns. One you launched just today. What made you decide to do that?
Well, the 2 campaigns have different messages, yet they're messages that clearly are united with each other. The one campaign that's purely a NYSET campaign is about identity. It's about people really being able to see who teachers are, what they do, how they help their children, how they're part of their community. By the way, how they happen to also be part of NYSET, the union that represents them. The second campaign is really about delivering a message, and that message is that the future of New York State depends upon an economy that is good for all New Yorkers. I think that's a message, frankly, that the governor shares. So the idea here is to figure out how to make that happen.
Okay, let's break that down just a little bit further, if you don't mind. The NYSET campaign, which you guys released today, came along with a statement from you, actually, that I found pretty interesting. You're basically suggesting that unions, and teachers in particular, unionized teachers, are being vilified in everywhere from Hollywood to state governments. I assume you mean the movie Waiting for Superman. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I'm talking about the front page of just about every major newspaper for the last 3 or 4 days has had the same headline, and it always comes out that governors, especially Republican governors, but governors around the country have decided that public employees are the villains, and the most absurd assertion is coming out of Wisconsin, I believe, where the suggestion is that the haves are the public employees and the have-nots are the taxpayers. Someone must have forgotten that public employees are taxpayers as well.
The other radio campaign, actually, that is not just NYSET, but also UFT and some of the community advocacy groups that are allies of the unions, is more along the lines of let's not balance the budget and make economic pronouncements on the middle class only. Let us have people who are doing quite well, for example, Wall Street, also pay their fair share. Is this the first kind of argument that you're going to start to make about keeping the millionaire's tax, which is actually slated to expire at the end of this year?
Well, clearly, when we look at the budget going forward, we're going to look at spending and how we control spending, but we're not going to be able to balance the budget on simply looking at the spending end. We're going to have to look at revenue. One of those pieces, frankly, is the millionaire's tax. It's not a tax cut. It's really providing a tax cut for wealthy people only. We can't afford that in New York State, not when we're trying to balance a budget. So, yes, it's the beginning of trying to deliver the message that it's about all New Yorkers, and we need to look at the same sacrifice and the same participation on the part of every New Yorker.
So, Dick, when Andrew Cuomo says no new taxes, you don't think that that also pertains to the millionaire's tax and reauthorizing it? Because he seems to think so.
Well, apparently he does think so, but I look at the millionaire's tax not as a new tax, but as a tax cut if we allow it to expire.
And you are going to, that's going to be the crux of the argument that unions are going to make going forward, that there can't be, is your argument, $10 billion worth of cuts to close the budget gap. Instead, there needs to be some sort of belt tightening coupled with revenue generation.
I'm going to take the governor's word, which is we need to reinvent the way we look at the way we do business in New York State. We're not looking at the budget in terms of trimming. We're looking at it as reinventing the budget. That'll mean looking at the revenue side and the spending side. Let's see where that goes with respect to taxes on the wealthy.
Okay, and just before I let you go, I want to ask you about this labor summit that took place yesterday. It was a meeting of mostly public sector unions. These are, of course, the very unions that you argue are being vilified, not just in New York, but all across the nation. What was the point of that get-together in advance of the governor's first ever State of the State address?
Well, the get-together in terms of being advance of the governor's State of the State was a matter of convenience, since most of us were here for the State of the State. The purpose behind the get-together was to really bring community and labor together around an issue of a common agenda, and that common agenda is creating a New York that has an economy that's good for all New Yorkers. We represent many of the workers in those communities. Those communities depend on the services that many of us provide. So it's a natural alliance, and it's an alliance that has to speak up and speak out about what's good for New York.
And my understanding is that the agreement between everybody who was there was you're all going to go forward together as one, but you didn't necessarily make a decision that you were going to fight on a particular topic or B particular topic.
The topic right now is that we need to have a New York that serves the needs of every New Yorker. That's a message that we will all unite behind, and each of us in our own way of identifying who we are will take the next step as individuals, whether they're as community groups, advocacy groups, or labor unions.